Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fallout. This is where I watch every play of every game of every week, trying to find you the diamonds in the rough for fantasy football and daily fantasy football purposes. Today I'm going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings, another tough division game. These were, if you watched my NFL Power Rankings from week 1, these were two teams in my top 10 in the Power Rankings, so kind of like a big college football matchup. I wanted to see what was going to happen in this game, and I wasn't disappointed. So let's just start with Green Bay because they came out with the fire in this game. They went up 21-0. Now Minnesota responded quickly. Well, I shouldn't say quickly, not quickly enough, I guess, but they responded and closed the gap, and we're in it right at the end there. But Green Bay, what can you say about this offense? I think this is kind of what we were expecting, or at least my projections and all that stuff. Everything I do with the Fantasy Football Almanac has kind of fallen into place here. I've had some hits and had some misses, but certainly more hits than misses. That's the whole point of this thing, right? But this offense, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I said, even after week 1 where they played the Chicago Bears, I think Aaron Jones went 13 carries for 39 yards. And while I think probably all the rest of the fantasy football community was like, oh, Aaron Jones, great. I drafted him in the second round and he sucked. Well, remember, he was playing the Chicago Bears defense, right? We saw the Chicago Bears defense do a really great job in Denver this week too, which we'll talk about in another video. But what I liked about that game with Chicago is that they committed to the run. Now, in the McCarthy years, they might have had like 6 carries that game or something, right? Or Aaron Jones might have just been falling off the map. Well, Coach LaFleur commits to that run. He committed to Aaron Jones, and what we saw in week 2 was that commitment. I think he had another 23 carries, 116 yards, found the end zone. Focal point, I think, in the offensive attack. That opens things up for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, if you look at the target total, Davante Adams, by the way, kind of took a step back up into that wide receiver 1 type role, which again, you play the Chicago Bears, you're gonna struggle. It's just gonna happen. It's gonna happen to every team this season. They're really, really good on defense. Well, Minnesota's also very good on defense, and Davante Adams looked really good, I thought, against that team. I think he's primed. Adams is primed to have a huge week. I haven't looked at the matchups for week 3 yet. Make sure you tune in to my fantasy football previews. My analytics are up and running now. They have enough data to really get going. So it's earnings season if you're a daily fantasy player. I have similar videos for preview for in future weeks, but Davante Adams is going to pop out soon. But if you look, Geronimo Allison was reacclimated into this game plan. I think he had 6 targets. He got into the end zone. Valdez-Scantling had 5 or 6 targets in his own right, didn't find the end zone, not as good of a game as he had in week 1. But what you're seeing this Packers team is its balance. Aaron Rodgers is finding people. They're running the ball. I think that this team is more likely to make a deep playoff run, especially with their stronger defense. This team is more likely to make a deeper playoff run than any team the Packers have had since their deep playoff runs in the past. So I think they've built another cycle. I like what I'm seeing from Green Bay. You probably aren't going to be able to grab anybody else at this point. Would I pick up Valdez-Scantling? Would I pick up Allison? Honestly, because of the balance, I probably would roll with who I have unless you're hurting at somebody else. But there are better targets, as I've said in other videos. I'm liking McLaurin in Washington, Mike Williams with the Chargers, if those guys are still available, which they might be. DJ Chark, a guy like him in Jacksonville, probably be better waiver wire pickups. But because you have Aaron Rodgers, if you're really hungry for a receiver or something like that, Valdez-Scantling would probably be my go-to guy, and if not him, Geronimo Allison would come after that. Jimmy Graham kind of fell back down to earth. I think we're going to see throughout the year Davante Adams, Aaron Jones are always going to be focal points, and then other guys are going to cycle in and out based on matchup, and that's what my daily fantasy football analytics are built to do, is identify those matchups. So again, if you're looking for some ideas on who to stream or who to pick up off of waivers, or who are the daily fantasy matchups or waiver plays or budget plays or what have you, check those videos out. Those are pretty good. Let's see. For the Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin Cook, this dude is so good. If he can just stay on the field, I'm really curious to see what he does if he can stay on this field for a full season. I'm thinking 15 yards, or 1,500 yards running, another 500 to 700 yards receiving. I think he'll break 2,000 yards total from scrimmage this season if he can stay healthy. If he can't, like I've been saying all off season, Alexander Mattison looks really good, but he's only a backup at this point. So only stash him if 1, you're in a deep league and you have the room. 2, you're in a dynasty league. 3, you own Dalvin Cook and you need the handcuff. he is, outside of like maybe Malcolm Brown with the Rams or, these different running backs, I think Madison is probably the best handcuff to own if you have the player, because if Cook goes down, Madison's a guy that can step right in and do just as well, in my opinion. So we're talking about Minnesota now. Kirk Cousins, first week, he threw the ball 10 times. This week, he threw the ball 30-something times. But if you look at the target distribution, not great. I had a reader ask me, do I start Diggs this week? There were a list of 5, and you could start 4. And there are 5 pretty good receivers. And I said, well, I would say Stefan Diggs, bench him now because Kirk Cousins only threw the ball 10 times in week 1. We want to see if that's a trend or not. Well, I can say that, with some certainty it's not a trend. It's just going to see how the games shake out. But Stefan Diggs only had a few targets. He did get in the end zone, so good for Diggs, but it wasn't a really fantastic game. Thielen is definitely the wide receiver 1 here, but it's pretty clear, I think, in the early sledding for the Minnesota Vikings. It's Thielen, it's Cook. If you have Cook, you can handcuff with Madison. Kirk Cousins, I think you waive him. You go for somebody else in fantasy football. Kyler Murray, believe it or not, is still out there in some leagues. He's come out to a strong start in his rookie campaign. So there's going to be more value out there, and I think Cousins will get you week in and week out. Diggs still has value, so don't get too ticked off if you have him. There will be times when Diggs will have bigger games. There will be times when Minnesota is not going to be able to run the ball at will. But credit to the team, man. They can run, and Dalvin Cook's really good. So there you go. There's the fantasy football fallout. If you're hungry for a wide receiver on the Green Bay side, I would say Valdez-Scantling, then Allison. In Minnesota, if you have Cook and you have roster space, get your Madison, get your Alexander Madison, because he will be a very, very nice insertion if Cook ends up going out with an injury, and he has in his first couple seasons. And then elsewhere, I'm not a big Rudolph fan. Graham, I think he's going to be up and down, so I don't really see a ton of other maybe daily fantasy and fantasy gems just yet. But stay tuned. So if you could, that brings us to the end of the episode. Please subscribe. There's a red button right over here in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You can hit that. There's also a button in the top left with our logo, our channel logo. You can hit that. That will also subscribe to this channel. We're trying to get to our 1,000 subscribers. We could really use your support. We're trying to get to a bunch of playtime too. That's how we grow. That's how we can reinvest in this channel and do some more cool stuff rather than me just kind of talking behind a brick wall or in front of a brick wall, as it were. So again, everybody, thanks for watching. Check out another episode, and our playlists, by the way, should be up here in the upper right hand side. Watch the playlists as well. We'll take you through every single game. Thanks a lot.